The message arrived at 2:17 in the morning. It was short. Only 6 words. I think someone is following me. Those were the last words anyone ever received from a student of the University of Alabama who had traveled to Barcelona for what was supposed to be the best experience of his life. But instead of coming back home, he simply disappeared. And what investigators discovered later made the case even darker. Section 1, the student everyone trusted. Daniel Carter was not the kind of student people worried about. At the University of Alabama, he was known as calm, polite, and focused. He did not get into trouble. He did not drink much. He did not like big parties. He was the type of person parents trusted and teachers respected. That is exactly why his disappearance shocked everyone. When Daniel told his parents that he had been selected for a short academic program in Barcelona, they were proud of him. It was a chance to see the world, experience a different culture, and build a future. Nothing about the trip looked dangerous. Nothing felt wrong. At least not at the beginning. Section 2, the trip that started perfectly. The first few days in Barcelona felt like a dream. Daniel sent photos of old streets, beautiful buildings, and crowded cafes. He told his parents that the city felt alive in a way he had never experienced before. Even his friends at the University of Alabama were jealous. He seemed happy. But then something small changed. It was not something dramatic. Just small details that did not make sense. He stopped sending photos as often. His messages became shorter. And sometimes, he did not reply for hours. At first, no one thought much about it. Until the night that message arrived. I think someone is following me. The message was sent to his roommate back in the United States. The roommate thought it was a joke. Daniel had never been the type to panic. He was calm, always careful, always logical. Why would he suddenly send something like that? When the roommate tried to call him, the phone rang once and then stopped. He tried again. This time, the phone was off. That was the moment when a simple study trip turned into a mystery. The day he disappeared. The next morning, Daniel did not show up to class in Barcelona. At first, the teachers thought he might be sick. But when they checked the hostel where he was staying, his room looked strange. His passport was still there. His bag was still there. Even his laptop was on the table. Only one thing was missing. Daniel. Police begin the investigation. When the police in Barcelona were informed that a student from the University of Alabama had disappeared, they first treated it like a normal missing person case. Tourists get lost sometimes. Some students leave without telling anyone. Others change plans suddenly. But this case was different. Because Daniel had left everything behind. And people do not disappear without taking their passport. 2 days later, the police found something that changed everything. A camera near a small street in Barcelona showed Daniel walking alone at night. He looked nervous. He kept looking behind him. At one point, he even stopped and turned around, as if he believed someone was following him. Then, something happened off camera. He walked out of the frame. And he never appeared again. Back in the United States, Daniel's parents contacted the University of Alabama again and again. They wanted answers. They wanted someone to explain how a student could disappear in a foreign country without anyone noticing. They traveled to Barcelona themselves. They searched the streets. They talked to people. They asked anyone who might have seen him. But every answer only created more questions. The dark possibility. The longer Daniel remained missing, the darker the situation became. Some people believed he had been followed. Others believed he had seen something he was not supposed to see. And some believed that someone had planned this from the beginning. But there was one thing that made the case even more disturbing. The last message. I think someone is following me. That message was never explained. 3 days after Daniel disappeared in Barcelona, the police finally tracked his phone signal. But what they found did not make sense. The phone was not in the hostel. It was not in a cafe. It was not even near the university campus where he had been attending classes. It was near a narrow street that most tourists never visited. When officers arrived, they expected to find a lost phone. Instead, they found something much stranger. The phone was switched off and placed carefully near a wall, not thrown, not broken, not damaged. It looked like someone had left it there intentionally. That was the moment when the case stopped looking like a normal missing person case, the witness who was afraid to speak. A shop owner near the same street in Barcelona told the police something that made the situation even darker. He said he had seen a young foreign student walking quickly late at night. The boy looked nervous. He kept turning around again and again. But the most disturbing part was this. The shop owner believed the student was not alone. He said he noticed another man standing across the street, watching him. The man did not move. He did not speak. He only watched. When the police asked the shop owner to describe that man, he hesitated. He said he was not sure if it was real or if he imagined it. But he was certain about one thing: the student looked scared. When investigators checked Daniel's phone from the University of Alabama, they discovered something strange. One message had been deleted just a few minutes before his phone stopped working. The message was never fully recovered. Only a few words appeared in the system. "I shouldn't have come here." Those words changed everything. Because Daniel had been happy during the first days of the trip. Why would he suddenly regret coming to Barcelona? Something had clearly happened. Police began checking every CCTV camera they could find in Barcelona. Most cameras showed nothing unusual. But one camera, placed near a small intersection, showed Daniel again. This time, he was not walking normally. He was walking faster than before. He kept looking behind him, and at one moment he even stopped completely, as if he had heard someone call his name. Then he suddenly turned into a dark street where the camera could no longer see him. What made the footage disturbing was not what it showed. It was what it did not show. No one appeared behind him. No one followed him on camera. But his fear looked real. Section 5, The parents arrive in Barcelona. Daniel's parents flew from the United States after hearing that he was still missing. They met officials from the University of Alabama and local police officers. They wanted answers, but the answers only created more fear. The police told them that Daniel had not used his passport. He had not withdrawn money. He had not contacted anyone. It was as if he had disappeared completely. His mother refused to believe it. She said Daniel would never leave without telling his family. She said he was careful, responsible, and calm. Something had to be wrong. And deep down, the police knew she was right. Section 6, The street nobody wanted to talk about. During the investigation in Barcelona, officers discovered that the same street where the phone was found had a strange reputation. Some locals avoided it at night. Some said it was unsafe. Others said tourists often got lost there. But what worried the investigators most was the silence. When they asked people if they had seen a foreign student that night, many refused to answer. Some said they were busy. Others simply walked away. It felt as if someone did not want the truth to come out. Back at the University of Alabama, one of Daniel's friends suddenly remembered something strange. A few days before leaving for Barcelona, Daniel had mentioned that someone had contacted him online. At that time, it did not seem important. Many students receive messages from people when they travel. But now, it felt different. What if Daniel had agreed to meet someone in Barcelona? And what if that person was the one following him? The case becomes a mystery. By the end of the first week, the disappearance of a student from the University of Alabama in Barcelona was no longer a simple missing case. It had become a mystery. A missing student. A deleted message. A phone placed carefully near a wall. A witness who was too afraid to speak. And one question that nobody could answer. What really happened that night? 8 days after the disappearance in Barcelona, the police finally found something that made the case even more serious. Daniel's backpack. It was discovered near a quiet area not far from the street where his phone had been found earlier. At first, investigators thought it might have been stolen and thrown away. But when they opened it, everything inside was still there: his notebooks, his university ID from the University of Alabama, and even the small diary he carried with him. Nothing was missing. Which made the discovery even more disturbing. Because if someone steals a bag, they take the valuables. But this bag looked like it had been placed there intentionally. The diary nobody expected. Inside the backpack, investigators found something that shocked everyone: a diary. It was small, simple, and written in English. At first, it looked like a normal travel journal. Daniel had written about his first days in Barcelona, the places he visited, the food he tried, and how excited he felt to be in another country. But then the tone suddenly changed. One of the last entries said, "I think someone is watching me. Maybe I'm just imagining it, but it doesn't feel safe anymore." Those words were written one day before he disappeared. The friend who knew more. Back at the University of Alabama, one of Daniel's closest friends contacted the police again. This time, he remembered something important that he had forgotten earlier. Daniel had told him that someone in Barcelona had asked him strange questions online before the trip. The person wanted to know exactly when he would arrive, where he would stay, and how long he would remain in the city. At the time, Daniel thought it was harmless. But now, it looked very different. Police found another CCTV camera near a small road in Barcelona. The video was short and unclear, but it showed something that made the investigation darker than ever before. The footage showed Daniel walking quickly late at night. A few seconds later, another figure appeared in the background. The person was too far away to be identified, but it was clear that someone was behind him. And the most disturbing part was this. The second person was not walking normally. He was moving slowly, carefully, as if he did not want to be seen. Section 5, the parents refused to stop. Daniel's parents were still in Barcelona, searching for answers. They visited the same streets again and again. They asked people if they had seen a foreign student. Some said no. Some did not want to talk. Others simply looked away. But his mother refused to believe that the case was hopeless. She said Daniel was still alive. She said a boy who had worked so hard to study at the University of Alabama would never just disappear. Her words made the case even more emotional. Section 6, the message that changed the case. While checking Daniel's laptop, investigators discovered something that completely changed the direction of the investigation. An email had been opened just hours before he disappeared. The email was from someone in Barcelona. It was short, and the message only said, "I know what you saw. We need to talk." That one sentence made the case darker than ever before. Because it meant Daniel had seen something important. And someone knew about it. At this point, the police had to consider a possibility they did not want to believe. What if Daniel had not been randomly followed? What if someone had planned everything before he even arrived in Barcelona? If that was true, then the disappearance was not an accident. It was planned. And if it was planned, then the person responsible was still out there. Section 8, the mystery becomes darker. By the end of the second week, the disappearance of a student from the University of Alabama in Barcelona had become one of the most disturbing mysteries anyone had seen. A backpack left behind. A diary full of fear. A message from someone who knew what he had seen. And CCTV footage showing a person following him in the dark. But the most frightening part was still ahead. Because the next discovery would change the story forever. Nearly 2 weeks after the disappearance in Barcelona, the police finally decided to search an area they had avoided earlier. It was not a famous tourist location. It was a quiet place outside the crowded streets, a place most students from the University of Alabama would never visit alone at night. The reason they returned there was simple: Daniel's backpack and phone had both been found near that area. And now investigators believed that this place might be connected to the last moments before he disappeared. What they discovered there made the case darker than ever. Section 2, the CCTV footage that was never public. Police found a private CCTV camera outside a small building in Barcelona. The owner had not shared it earlier because he thought it was not important. But when officers finally checked the footage, they saw something that made the investigation completely different. The video showed Daniel walking late at night again. But this time, he was not alone. Someone was clearly walking behind him. The figure stayed far enough away to avoid being recognized, but close enough to make one thing clear: Daniel was being followed. This was no longer a theory. It was now a fact. Section 3, the email that came too late. While investigators continued checking his laptop from the University of Alabama, they found another message that had been opened just minutes before his last phone signal in Barcelona. The email said, "You should not have come here." That sentence shocked everyone involved in the case. Because it meant someone had known about his trip before he even arrived. And it also meant that whoever sent that message did not want him in the city. This was no longer a random disappearance. It was something planned. Daniel's parents, who were still searching in Barcelona, visited the same street where his phone had been found. They spoke to another shop owner who had not talked to the police earlier. At first, the man refused to say anything. But after seeing Daniel's mother crying, he finally told them something disturbing. He said he remembered seeing the student that night. But he also remembered hearing someone shouting from the end of the street. He could not understand the language clearly, but he was sure that the student looked terrified. That was the moment when the parents realized the truth might be much darker than they imagined. Section 5, the evidence that made police silent. Back at the station in Barcelona, investigators reviewed everything again: the messages, the CCTV clips, the diary, the backpack, and the phone. All the clues pointed to the same thing. Daniel had not disappeared by accident. He had not run away. He had not left the city willingly. Someone had been following him. Someone had sent him messages. And someone had planned something long before he arrived. But the most frightening part was still missing: the truth about what happened after the CCTV footage ended. Section 6, the street that changed everything. Late one evening, officers returned again to the same street in Barcelona. This time, they searched more carefully than before. They checked the walls, the small corners, the dark entrances, and every place where someone could hide. And then they found something small. Something most people would have ignored. A piece of paper. It was wet, dirty, and almost destroyed. But when they looked closely, they realized it was part of a page from Daniel's diary, the same diary found in his backpack earlier. And on that paper, only a few words were still visible. "They know I saw it." Those words changed everything. Soon, the disappearance of a student from the University of Alabama in Barcelona was no longer a small investigation. News channels began talking about it. Students started sharing the story online. People wanted to know what had happened to him. Some believed it was a crime. Some believed it was a mistake. And some believed Daniel had discovered something he was never supposed to see. But nobody had proof. Section 8, the final truth was still hidden. By now, the story had become darker than anyone expected. A student who had traveled to Barcelona to study had disappeared without a trace. Messages had been deleted. Emails had been sent. Someone had followed him. And a page from his diary suggested he had seen something dangerous. But the truth was still missing. And the next discovery would finally answer the question everyone was asking. What really happened that night? Nearly 3 weeks after the disappearance in Barcelona, the investigation finally reached a point where hope slowly began to disappear. Police had searched the same areas again and again. They had checked the CCTV footage hundreds of times. They had spoken to everyone who might have seen a foreign student walking alone that night. But the truth finally appeared in the most unexpected way. It came from a worker who cleaned the streets early in the morning. At first, he did not think what he saw was important. But when he heard about the missing student from the University of Alabama, he decided to speak to the police. What he told them changed everything. The last place he was seen. The worker said he remembered seeing a young foreign student walking near a quiet street in Barcelona late at night. The student looked scared. He was walking fast, looking behind him again and again. But the most disturbing part was what happened next. The worker said he noticed another person walking behind the student. The second person stayed far away, almost hidden in the dark. At first, the worker thought it was just a coincidence. But when the student suddenly disappeared around the corner, the second person also disappeared at the same moment. That was the last time anyone saw Daniel alive, the truth hidden in the messages. Investigators finally managed to recover part of the deleted messages from Daniel's phone. What they found made the case darker than anyone expected. The messages showed that Daniel had accidentally seen something he was not supposed to see during his first days in Barcelona. It was not something huge. It was not something dramatic. But it was enough to make someone afraid that he might talk about it. One message clearly said, "You should forget what you saw. This is not your problem." Those words confirmed what the police had feared from the beginning: someone had been watching him for days. When the police combined the CCTV footage, the diary, the messages, and the witness statements, one thing finally became clear. Daniel had not run away. He had not disappeared by accident. He had not left the city willingly. He had been followed. And the person who followed him had known exactly when to act. The realization shocked everyone connected to the University of Alabama. A simple study trip had turned into something no one expected, a mystery that would remain unanswered for years, the parents who never stopped waiting. Even after the investigation slowed down in Barcelona, Daniel's parents refused to accept that the story had ended. They stayed in the city longer than anyone expected. They walked the same streets again and again. They talked to strangers. They asked people if they had seen their son. Some people tried to help. Some felt sorry. Others simply stayed silent. But his parents never gave up hope. Because for them, the story had not ended. The case that became a mystery forever. Over time, the disappearance of a student from the University of Alabama in Barcelona became something bigger than a normal case. Students began talking about it online. People started sharing the story. This story is not only about a missing student. It is about how quickly a normal life can change. It is about how one message can turn a simple trip into a mystery. And it is about how sometimes the truth is never fully discovered. Daniel left the University of Alabama with dreams. He traveled to Barcelona to study, to learn, and to build a future. But instead of coming back home, he became part of a mystery that no one could explain. The ending that still feels unfinished. Even today, people still ask the same question. What really happened that night in Barcelona? No one knows the full answer. And maybe that is why this story is so powerful. Because sometimes the most frightening stories are not the ones that end with a clear truth. The most frightening stories are the ones that end with silence.